Time.
On today's episode of Big Time, the podcast, brought to you by the Landscape Supply Center out there in Herman, Maine, the Russo brothers, friends of the program. We've got our UMFK basketball preview edition. Today I'm joined by both coaches at the University of Maine at Fort Kent. We got Tom Bird, head coach of the men's program, my man Fletcher Brown, head coach of the women's program. We sit down, we talk a little bit about where they're from, how they grew up, how they got to UMFK, and a bunch of other stuff on today's episode of Big Time. Let's rock.
I'm on my way, I'm making it. I got to make it show, yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, joining me on the line as part of our basketball kickoff here on Big Time. We got the head coach of the University of Maine at Fort Kent, my alma mater, the men's basketball coach, Tom Bird on the line, coming in from Fort Kent. Tom, how are you?
Hey, Tom, not too bad. Thanks for having me. It's a good exposure for us, and glad we can help out for you.
Absolutely. So we talk about UMFK a lot on the show. Obviously, UMFK is near and dear to my heart. I grew up around the program, so UMFK Hoops is always a big deal around here. So we're happy to have you on. Real quick, before we get into and talk about the season and where things are going this year, let's talk a little bit about you. So you've been the head coach for, what year is this? What year are you going into?
Yeah, this is year 5. So when I took over the program, they'd won, I think, 2 games and 7 games the 2 years previous to that. But the previous coach, Eric Werntgen, did a great job of, my first incoming class, his last recruiting class. He did a really great job with that. So, he left me in a good position, and so we won 10 games that first year, and then the last 3 we've won 20, 23, and 23. So we've been getting better every year.
Things are on the up and up, that's for sure. So going into your 5th year, and you're a Maine native, correct? You're from the state.
Yep. Grew up in Lee, graduated from Lee Academy. Obviously played all sports there. Basketball was always my favorite. I knew I was going to get into coaching. At some point, my uncle was my high school coach at Lee, and so I was always in the gym with him, or with the girls' high school teams, and so just always in the gym as a young kid on the bench doing stats, and obviously grew up loving basketball. That was kind of our family sport. So I always knew I was going to get into coaching. Went to Thomas College, graduated there with a sports management degree, but in college, it wasn't all about the degree, really. I knew I was going to coach at some point, so just had to figure out where I was going to get started with that.
So you mentioned your uncle was was your high school coach. What's his name? I know the face, but I can't think of his name right now.
Randy Harris.
Randy Harris. Okay, there we go. And he was there. I know him as the coach now, but he was there when you were playing as well.
Yeah, I think he is now, if not the longest, one of the longest tenured head coaches in all of Maine high school basketball. He's been there for, I'm going to butcher this, but he's been there since he was 22 years old, and and going to school as a student at Hudson. He would travel back and forth from Bangor to Lee to coach the team. So he's 57 now, so he's been there for 35 years, I'm going to guess.
Wow. With him being your uncle, were you the type as a kid to go to practices, travel with the team, stuff like that? Were you right into it like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I would always be on the bus as a what-year-old, but 7, 8-year-old, I was sitting on the bench doing stats or running the clock at practice, or I was always involved somehow. So basketball has just been pretty much what I've known for forever.
For those listeners that have never been to Lee, Maine, describe Lee real quick.
Lee, well, for those of you who know Fort Kent's a booming metropolis compared to Lee. We have one gas station that has a little restaurant attached to it, and if you blink, you may miss it. So there's no stoplights. We have 2 stop signs, I think. And for a while I was in middle school and high school, that gas station was not there, so we had to travel 15 minutes to Lincoln to even get gas or milk or a soda or whatever. So very, very small town.
Yeah, I remember I went to Lee. The first time I ever went to Lee, I worked a basketball camp there. This was like 2007 or 2008. And just like you said, like you blink and you miss it. I had no idea. Like pretty much like the school is pretty much the town, pretty much, right?
Yeah, the school is pretty much the town, and they've, they bought some properties near it, and they've turned them into additional dorms because we have a huge dorm population, huge international student population at Lee. So they've, that was overpopulating the one dormitory that we have. So they had to purchase some houses that, are close to campus and turn those into dorms. So yeah, it really is. It's what you would picture as a college town. It's a high school town.
And it may be a small town, but you walk into that high school gym and there are banners just plastered all over the walls, though.
Yeah, it's been the banner. If you really look a little closer, they're all from. Well, I'm going to date myself now. I guess I was in high school graduated 11 years ago, so they're all from about the last 15 years. There's very few before that, but the name I'm sure you've heard of, Shelby Pickering. She started it all off as a freshman for the women's, for the girls teams, and then everybody kind of followed suit. It's been a real strong athletics program at Lee for the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah, like with Shelby Pickering, like wasn't there it was like her group, right? Like they were like good like in every sport, like they were winning state championships.
Yeah, yeah. So she started it. She would have been when she was a senior. My sister, that was the class that they won 8 state championships in 4 years, and 1 in cross country. I think 3 in basketball, 2 in soccer, 1 in softball. I think so. That was the class. So I was kind of overshadowed in high school. My team made it to 1 Eastern Maine final in basketball my sophomore year that we lost. So that was my moment of glory where. Here they are winning state championship every time you look around.
Now, you mentioned the dorm population and it being a prep school now. Was that a thing when you were going to school as well, or was that after your time?
Yeah, so that started my junior year of high school. We always had, a few international students, a lot from Asia. We had some, Vietnamese kids and some Korean kids. But my junior year is when they started the prep program. So that was when, we started to get the huge influx of people from outside of Lee coming into Lee Academy.
So you mentioned the prep program coming into existence whenever you were in high school. Were you able to take advantage of that? Because I always say one of the best advantages about growing up in Fort Kent is having the university there, and as a kid being able to be exposed to that higher level of competition that most other small towns don't have. Were you able to do that against like these prep players when they're coming in high school, or was the prep program not very that good whenever they first started up?
No, it was very good. There was multiple Division I players from both of the years that I was there when the prep program was going on. So yeah, that would be something that I would do a lot. They would always practice late in the evening after all the high school teams got done. So yeah, that was something that I always stayed, and whether I participated or not, I was again always just always there, always around them. When we weren't traveling or when we didn't have games, I would actually travel with the prep team. That was back when MCI still had a team, so I was traveling to some of the closer games. But one of the best prep memories that I have from Lee is that we played our Lee team played against Michael Beasley a couple times at MCI. So that was pretty cool to be able to see him back when he was in prep school when he was really good.
Yeah. So you mentioned kind of like the highlight of your high school career was the Eastern Maine final. You guys made an appearance in your junior or sophomore year, right? But you got to toot your own horn a little bit, because I had Dom Rosnell on the podcast last week, and he was saying how he was in the McDonald's game when your name came up. You were on the McDonald's All-Star game, weren't you? You were in that game? Yeah,
I was with him. I think your brother was on the team too. Yeah. I think we all graduated that same year. So I was a McDonald's player for the state of Maine. I was also a Mr. Basketball semifinalist, and at the time for a Class D player to be a semifinalist and otherwise a top 10 senior in the state was kind of unheard of. So that was a nice accomplishment for myself. And that sophomore year, we played Central Aroostook, and We lost. I think we lost 65 to 50. I don't think I know the exact score. 65, 57. And I had 29 in that game, so not that any of my former Lee teammates will be playing, but if I had got any help that game, we may have squeaked out. So
it's too bad. And that's the thing. You always remember those losses. You remember the exact score and everything like that. Those are tough right there.
For sure. And at the Bangor Auditorium. So that's,
on top of that too, right?
Unforgettable place.
Yeah. So you mentioned after college or after high school you went to Thomas. Did you play ball at Thomas, or were you just there to go to school?
No, I didn't. So I actually, I don't know if I ashamed is the word to use, but not ashamed. But I actually started my college career at UMFK.
Great place, great school.
Yeah, I did a semester there. I think I decided on UMFK late July. School was getting ready to start in August, so I knew I was going to go to college. I just wasn't overly motivated to figure out where I was going to go. Like I said, I knew I needed to go to college, obviously, for 4 years, but as soon as that was over, I was going to somehow get into coaching. So, it wasn't a typical, I knew I was going to, be a business major and trying to look for the best business school. It really didn't matter where I went or even what my degree was in. So I did a semester at UMFK, and then I moved back home and started commuting to Husson. And that's where I started helping, my Uncle Randy with the varsity team. I would travel around with them and be at practices. And so like I said, I knew I wanted to coach, so I figured I could play for another 4 years, but ultimately, I figured I might as well get a head start by starting to coach as an 18-year-old.
Yeah, so that's kind of like the rare thing, because you figure like you were a good high school player, obviously made the McDonald's game, all that stuff, and most ball players they want to get to college and keep playing and stuff like that, but you kind of already knew what you wanted to do long term, and your biggest concern was just getting the experience and getting in the coaching game as soon as you could.
Yeah, for sure. Then I graduated from Thomas, and a couple months before that happened, I sent an email to every Division I school, men and women in the country, because I really, at that point, I thought the best path into it was to become a graduate assistant somewhere, even though I had zero interest in continuing to go to school. After my bachelor's degree, I really had enough. School was never a huge thing that I loved to do. So I got a call back from the Florida women's basketball team, and about a graduate assistant position, and I kind of asked a question to them. Looking back, I don't know if it was the best thing to do, but it ended up working out. I kind of just asked them, hey, is there any other position but this one available that can pay me just a little bit, enough for me to survive on? And and they said, yeah, we've got this position, this assistant video coordinator position that will pay you, I don't know what minimum wage was back then, $7 an hour. And so I made just enough to pay my rent and buy a few groceries, and that's what I did for the year. But, that was the best decision I probably could have ever made. So that kind of got me jump started. I went the next year to North Dakota State and became the director of operations there. And our head coach there lost her job, so I was kind of scrambling, looking for another position, and Fort Kent kind of just fell into my lap. So here we are.
Yeah, go back and explain to me the director of operations. What kind of duties does that entail?
So pretty much all the behind-the-scenes stuff. The director of operations technically is not allowed to coach or recruit. So it's pretty much every other thing besides that. I was coordinating recruiting visits, friends and family of North Dakota State, of the women's basketball program. I was in charge of everything travel, so all flights, buses when we get there, all hotels, figuring out meals and menus everywhere we went, scheduling, pregame shoot-arounds. And so really, when I say everything else, it was really every other little thing that you could ever think of that needed to be done. That was what I was doing. But being at Florida with the video part, and then being at North Dakota with the director of operations part, it gave me an opportunity to really see everything beyond coaching. Because when you get to a small school like Fort Kent here, it's so much more than just the X's and the O's and coaching on court. Fletcher, the women's coach who played for me for a couple of years, he helps me out when he can, but it's really a one-man show here. So I'm really doing all the video stuff, all the Dobo stuff, and all the coaching stuff. So I think it was good for me to be able to do both of those positions at the Division I level. So kind of gave me a perspective on everything.
Yeah, I was going to say they both prepped you exactly for what you're doing now, because you mentioned being at a smaller school, like you do everything. Like you wear 1,000 hats. It's not just the basketball coach; it's everything else that goes along with that as well. So it prepped you, and then you wound up at Fort Kent. So before we talk about how you got to Fort Kent, you kind of had UMFK connections through Coach Graffam, right? So Coach Graffam was the men's coach up here for a very, very long time. Did you coach under him at Lee at all?
So when I was traveling, when I moved back home and was going to Hudson, I was kind of helping out the prep team and the high school team when I could. So yeah, I was working with Coach Graffam for, I don't know if it was 1 or 2. I can't remember now if it was 1 or 2 years, but yeah, for at least a year, worked with Coach Graffam. He was he's a great guy. I really, really enjoyed being around him and being able to learn from him. So that was a good experience for me. And then, yeah, at the time, didn't know that he had coached here at Fort Kent. But before I took the job here, I had been to Fort Kent once in my life, so not anything that I would have ever imagined myself being here, to be honest.
Right. And then you mentioned Fletch. I also had Fletch in the podcast, and we were talking about him and how he wound up at Fort Kent and got the coaching gig. So it was basically his first head coaching gig was a college basketball coach, and for you as well, your first head coaching gig was being in charge of your own program. Yeah,
really, not only head coaching, but any coaching. So we'll rewind just a little bit. So North Dakota State, I'm kind of looking for a job. I'm applying for just Dobo jobs because at that point I don't think I'm really ready to be an assistant coach, let alone a head coach. So I hadn't really been looking at any head coaching jobs, and then kind of just got this one. So I was a little unsure of myself. I knew I could do the job, but I didn't know if I was quite ready to step right into a head coaching job, not having really any even assistant coaching experience.
Explain some of the initial challenges, because you mentioned this was, 2 years being graduated from college. You like 24, 25 when you got the job?
Yeah, I was 25 when I took over. So yeah, I guess the
you might have been coaching some guys the same age as you, right?
Absolutely. I had 2 guys that were actually older than me. So I guess that would be challenge number 1, was to try to rein them in. But I guess I've always taken the same philosophy, and I do the same thing here. I still consider myself fairly young at 29. So I always say at the end of the year that really I think I have got the best relationship with my players than any other coach here at Fort Kent, and maybe any other coach anywhere. And I just think I can relate to them. I was a young guy once upon a time. So I don't have a whole lot of rules and regulations. It's not it's not a military program here. It's a pretty loose program, and our guys have been able to to understand that for the 5 years that I've been here, that I'm going to give them a lot of freedoms, but they got to make sure that even though I'm young and still close to some of their ages, that when we step between the lines of the basketball court, that we mean business, and our guys have always been able to respect my age and kind of being young, and so it's something that's always worked out, never been a problem before, and something obviously that makes it a lot easier to do my job.
Right. And seems to be working. I mean, you mentioned you guys have had 3 straight 20-win seasons, or 2 straight 20-win seasons?
Yeah, 3 straight 20-win seasons. 3 years ago we won 20 games, went 20-14, I think. 2 years ago we went 23-9. That was probably the best team I've ever had, just because we had so many guys that were experienced. Joe McCluskey, that was his senior year, so he'd been here for 3 years.
Right.
There was a couple of other guys that were 4-year players. So we had so much more experience. Obviously one of the challenges is getting players to Fort Kent. We have a lot of junior college kids, so they're only here for 2 years, which makes it a little bit tough, to really build the program around. But it's been something that's been successful for us. So yeah, 2 years ago that team was probably the best team I've ever had. Last year we had more talent, but we weren't quite the together team that we had 2 years ago. So we've lost in the semifinals 2 years in a row. So hopefully we can take that next step forward this year.
Yeah, so let's talk about this here. So I'm guessing you're at the point now where you've been to the back-to-back Final Fours. I'm guessing it's national championship. That's the goal. Like, it's not just making the tournament; it's winning the championship. That's the goal this year, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think probably it was last year too. 2 years ago we got a little unlucky. We lost by one in double overtime. Had 3 foul shots to at least tie it up at the end of double overtime, and missed all 3 of them. So that was kind of heartbreaking 2 years ago. Last year we were right there. We played against a team that was just a little more athletic than we were. They played five guards and just got up and down. I think we ended up losing by 7. Really, we were right in that game. I think we missed 14 foul shots in that game and went 0 for 14 from 3 in the second half. So we've been knocking on the doorstep for sure the last couple of years. And yeah, absolutely, it's national championship aspirations this year for sure.
We talked a little bit about the obviously going to the national championship and stuff like that. One thing you guys have been in the news for the last couple of years as well is your schedule. I mean, you've been getting D1 teams on the roster. And real quick, I just want to point out we're counting that UMaine game as a win, right? I know UMaine is not counting it as a loss, but that's a win for UMFK, right? Versus UMaine a couple years ago.
Absolutely. So the USCAA rules are a little flexible. They kind of say you get 30 games, exhibition or not. So yeah, when I was going to count it before, okay, anyway, but yeah, it's definitely after we won. Yeah, that was the first victory of the year. So
I was there. That was one of the best games I've ever been to in my life at any level. That was just from beginning to end. That was one of the best games, one of the most fun games I've ever been to. It was great.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun to be a part of, and we had seen them play a week ahead of time. They played Hudson. I brought a few of the guys down, and we watched them play, and we kind of just all agreed, and that was kind of the message that we took out of that was they were probably better at us than maybe every single basketball category you could think of, but there wasn't a glaring part of their game that we knew we couldn't handle. So we knew we'd have to play well. And really, everybody says, well, you must have played the game of your lives. To be honest, we played well, obviously, to win the game, but we shot 7 for 20 from the foul line. We gave up 26 offensive rebounds, and Joe, who was, our best scorer, a guy who scored 1,600 points here, he had 7 points for the game. So, yeah, we played great, but honestly, it wasn't the best we could have even played. But yeah, no, that's definitely probably the highlight of my 4 years so far here. It was a real exciting time for us as a basketball program, and something that we'll always look back on.
So that was 2 years ago. You guys played UVM last year, University of Vermont, as a D1 game. What are some of the highlights on the schedule this year?
Yeah, so we're playing 2 Division I's this year. We'll go to Liberty University in Virginia. That'll be their home opener. So that should be exciting. If I don't really know what their fan base is, but if there was ever to be fans at a game, you'd think it would be the home opener. So we're excited about that one. And then that'll be November 8th, and then on December 7th we're going to Massachusetts. We'll play UMass Lowell, who was picked to be the bottom of the America East. So that game, I think we may have a real shot at at least being able to keep that one close. Vermont last year jumped on us, and we never had a chance after a minute and a half. They came down and hit 3 threes, bang bang bang. We were down 9-0 a minute and a half into the game. And
they were good last year, though, right? They were one of the favorites to win the conference last year, right?
Yeah, they were very good. They were coming off an NCAA tournament, the first undefeated season in America East history. That obviously they got upset last year by UMBC, and we all know what happened there. So, right. But yeah, I would say the last 2 years for Vermont was maybe their best 2-year stretch in their program's history. So we'll play those 2 Division I's. We'll also take about a 11-day trip to. We'll start out in Atlanta, and play two top 10 NAIA Division I schools there, and then we'll venture down through Florida and play 3 other games in Florida. So, yeah, you said, we've been in the news for our scheduling. It's been that's obviously one of the things that I have to do, one of my duties, but probably maybe the thing that I enjoy the most is trying to create the schedule.
And it's a great recruitment tool as well, though.
Yeah, absolutely. It's probably maybe our besides our success, it's probably our best recruiting tool, especially for our West Coast kids. Last year we were able to take a trip back to the West Coast and spend 10 days in Seattle and Portland, Oregon, and we had played a game in Idaho as well. But this year's team, I think we've got 2 guys that maybe have been to Florida out of 10. So it'll be nice to be able to take those guys and show them a different part of the country. Something that we'll hopefully be able to do every year. These teams are all paying us to come play, so it's money that this year's money will roll over to next year. This year's flights were paid from last year's guarantees, so we've got a couple trips planned already for next year. And so, like I said, something hopefully we'll be able to continue every year. It is a great advantage. There's some Division I teams that aren't taking 2 plane trips, and so we're very fortunate to be able to do that.
Real quick for our main listeners, where can we catch you guys in state this year?
Yeah, it's few and far between. We have for any of our main rivals that are listening, they don't want to play us, so. We'll obviously play Ampi and Machias as we do every year, but we're also playing Maine Maritime this year. That'll be in January, I believe January 22nd at Maine Maritime. So that'll be for our Central Maine, Bangor area fans. But other than that, I guess we're playing in November. November 14th, we're playing at Unity College against UMaine Augusta. So those 2 plus we got 5 home games this year. Berkeley College will be up on February 2nd. That'll be the highlight of the home schedule. They've won 3 or 4 straight D2 national championships in the USCAA, and they've lost like 1 game in the last 3 years. So
that'll be a good one then.
Yeah, that'll definitely be the highlight of the home season. So yeah, we're looking forward to it. We've got a tough November. I play 10 or 11 games in the matter of about 22 days. So and that's with a trip to Buffalo, a trip to Virginia, and then the trip to Atlanta and Florida. So I might have overdone myself for that first month in November. So we're just gonna have to try to survive that month, and then hopefully we'll be fine tuned for the rest of the year.
That's the biggest thing. As long as you guys are healthy and ready to go come tournament time, that's what matters. So.
Yeah, well, for sure. So looking forward to getting going for sure.
Absolutely. Well, Tom, as a former Bengal and still a fan, happy to see the program in good hands, reaching new heights. So we wish you continued success. Thank you for coming on. Best of luck this year. Anything you want to say to the fans before we get up out of here?
Well, come support us. I know home games are few and far between, but we're pretty well attended anyway. But if you haven't seen a game for a couple of years, come on out. The guys work really hard in practice. They put a fun brand of basketball on. There'll be some dunks, there'll be a lot of threes. So we try to put an exciting product on the floor. So hopefully people will come out and support that, and hopefully we can kind of turn the page this year and come back with a championship.
Absolutely. Well, once again, thank you for coming on. We appreciate it. Tom Bird, head coach of the University of Maine at Fort Kent Bengals. Make sure to go check him out if you can. Tom, thanks for coming on. All right, joining me now on the line, actually from Fort Kent. It's a little bit weird. Usually all my guests that I talk to from Fort Kent, I do in Fort Kent, but doing things a little bit backwards. On the line, we got Fletcher Brown.
Yeah.
I said it right?
That's me, man.
We got Fletcher Brown, head coach of the University of Maine at Fort Kent women's basketball team. We're going to keep things going with our 2018 basketball preview edition of Big Time, the podcast. Fletcher, you can go ahead and say what up real quick. Let everyone know a little bit about yourself, Just anything you want to get off your chest just to get things going, basically.
Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate any chance UMFK can get some publicity, especially the women's basketball team. It's my pleasure to be able to share a little bit about what we're doing and what we're about. So thanks, man. Thank you.
No problem. And we're all about giving UMFK shine. I love UMFK. It's near and dear to my heart. So anytime I can give UMFK some shine, I'm all about it. So this is what your second year as head coach?
Yeah, I'm going into my second full season as the head women's coach after a season helping out Tom Bird with the men's program.
So you got to be one of the youngest coaches in America, right? I mean, you're not too fresh out of college yourself here.
Yeah, no, this is. I was thinking about that the other day. Like, I'm actually relatively a relative puppy in all of this. This is my third year out of school, and it's, like I said, my second year as a head coach. So I got a ton to learn, and every day, if I can just, I'm really fortunate to be in such a position at such a young age. So every day I just thank everybody for the opportunity.
So coaching at UMFK, played at UMFK. Before that, let's go way back. So let's find out a little bit more about Coach Fletcher. So not from Maine, though. You had an interesting journey getting to Maine, I'm guessing. Where are you originally from?
I'm originally from San Francisco. I grew up in Hunters Point, which is a neighborhood in San Francisco. I went to Balboa High School right in the city. After my senior year, I wasn't really recruited by anybody. I had sent out, I made a highlight tape. I made a DVD. This is like probably the last year that people were making highlight tapes on the DVDs. I sent that DVD out to a bunch of junior colleges. One coach got back to me. That was Coach Miguel Johnson at Contra Costa Community College. I went every day in the sun. He asked me to come to an open gym. I went. I played a little bit for him. He asked me if I wanted to be on the the summer team roster and kind of take it day by day. So I took BART and bus. BART is like basically the subway that we have in the Bay Area. So I took BART and bus out there every day and grinded every day, got a roster spot, played as well as I could. 2 years later, Eric Wertingen reached out to me, and we kind of settled on me having an opportunity to play here at UMFK, and then Tom Bird took over, and the rest is history, I guess.
Yeah, so that you were one of the original, because like UMFK, they've recruited in a couple different ways. They've had different eras, basically. It's like they went to like a European phase, and there was the Jamaican phase, and there was like the Montreal phase, and now like all the programs are getting kids out of California. And you must have been one of those first waves of California kids that came out here, right?
Yeah, I was. There was like one guy on the team, James Givens. We actually played against each other in junior college. He was a year ahead of me. We played against each other. We were in the same conference, and I think that's part of the reason that Coach Wernigan went back to that conference. But then, other than him, there was like one or two young ladies on the volleyball team, one or two on the women's basketball team. But the year that I got here, there was a ton of us, and then we've just kind of continued going back to that pipeline ever since.
I want to go back to your high school days real quick, because the Bay Area, well known for its hoops lore. I mean, you guys have had players going way back to GP, Jason Kidd, all those guys.
Bill Russell,
Russell, you're going way back, yeah. So when you were coming up, did you play against anybody in high school, or what was like the high school scene like when you were coming up through?
In San Francisco, we're kind of like our own thing. A lot of the real famous guys that made it out aren't exactly right from in the city. They're kind of more on the outside, like Oakland, San Lorenzo, Hayward. Guys that, one guy that I matched up against, Aaron Gordon. He plays for the Orlando Magic right now. Mm-hmm. A bunch of guys that ended up playing Division I. Taylor Johns, Joshua Fox. I'm trying to think. Kiwi Gardner. There's really a lot of talent coming out of the Bay Area. The league that I played in was a little bit smaller because we were more of like an inner city San Francisco league. So we didn't have as many guys make it as far as some other names, but It was physical. It was heated. Every game was the battle. You know, a team could be in conference play with 2 or 3 wins, and then they'll knock off the number one team in the league. And real small gyms. All the schools in San Francisco were built in like the 1920s, so
Right.
they weren't really built with like gyms designed for basketball. So the sideline is like a foot from the wall. You know, the benches are practically on the court. You pack 300, 400, 600 people in there, and they're right on top of you. And you play against high schools in different neighborhoods. And, you know, some guys in some of the inner city schools, they got beef with somebody in a kid at another high school in a different neighborhood. So it was a real heated atmosphere every game, no matter what, no matter who you were playing or anything. So it was really a lot of fun. It was tough. It was physical. I really credit growing up in the city with kind of the person I am today.
That's what's up. You mentioned the JUCO scene out there, so just explain why Fort Kent has kind of tapped into the whole recruiting the JUCO scene in California, because I'm guessing California's got a hell of a lot of people, and there are a lot of talented people, and just not enough like top tier schools for people to go to, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be a lot more talent than there are places to play. That's just kind of the nature of college athletics, no matter what sport you're talking. California, there's so many junior colleges. I mean, I don't know the exact number, but it's got to be upwards of, I don't know, 100, something like that, just junior colleges all throughout the state. And for a Division III NAIA level player, there's not a lot of affordable options, especially because a lot of schools at the Division III NAIA size don't always offer a full ride scholarship. So there's a lot of talented players in California who, after 2 years, you know, they don't really care about staying close to home so much. They're mainly focused on getting their degree, making the most out of the final 2 years of eligibility that they have. So when a place like UMaine Fort Kent comes knocking, if it's an affordable price, a different experience, something that's, you know, a high quality education, it's hard to pass it down. And that's kind of the situation I was in after my 2 years at junior college. So it was a pretty good match at the time.
Right. When you came out here, like, were you just looking for any place to go play, or did you actually check out Fort Kent and get a feel for it before making a decision?
No, I mean, after my 2 years, just like in high school, wasn't highly recruited. I've been in touch with a couple different universities, but Coach Warngen was fairly persistent. I looked some stuff up online. You know, we talked about financials. We talked about the experience of being able to travel all along the East Coast. I didn't really have any desire to stick around at home. You know, I was ready to get out on my own and kind of do my own exploring. And Fort Kent was pretty much as far away as I could get from San Francisco, both in terms of geography and just the culture and just a whole different world. So I jumped at the opportunity to get away.
So did you play for Eric when you got out here, or was Eric getting done at that point?
Eric was finishing up. He called me in the summer leading into the year that I came out here, and he decided to prioritize his family, which I totally respect. You know, he's a hell of a nice guy. He's a pretty good recruiter. You know, he found a lot of us, Joe McCluskey and Benson Orogbo, myself. He did a pretty good job of recruiting some good dudes. He decided to prioritize his family, and Tom Bird took over. And fortunately, Tom and I hit it off, and, you know, we've created a really tight bond to this day.
So you played 2 years of ball out here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what was the experience like? How would you explain the difference between the California JUCO scene versus the main New England small college basketball school type of experience?
You know, at my junior college and matching up with the athletes out west, I was probably the least athletic guy, definitely on my team and probably in the whole conference. Just my foot speed was not there. My muscle mass was not there. But when I came out here, I think a little bit had to do with the fact that I put on a little muscle and kind of figured out the speed of the game. But out west, man, it's up and down. Scores are in the 90s, triple digits. In New England, up, northeast, a little bit more structured, a little bit more of a half court game, especially when you play against the schools like, Husson, who's in Bangor, and Middlebury College in Vermont. Those teams are going to execute really well in the half court. Out west, man, if you got the 5 or 6 best athletes, the chances of you putting yourself in a position to win at the end of the game are probably pretty high. Just run and gun, full court pressure, a lot more dunks, a lot more alley-oops, just a lot more fast-paced, which has its advantages. But for a guy like me, I think I'm a little bit better suited for the half-court game.
Right. How'd you guys do your 2 years out here, the 2 years you played?
Neither season that I played, we didn't make it to the national tournament. But and at first I was a little bit sour. Coming from a junior college program that was historically, fairly decent. We made the state playoffs. When I came out here, I thought, man, it's kind of a bummer to not be on a team that gets any recognition or 500 record. But looking back, I was a part of something that was the beginning of something really special. Coach Bird has turned the program around, 100 times over. The couple seasons before he got here, they had won like 2 games and 7 games. Our first season, we won 9 games. The season after that, we won 20 games. His third season, which was the season that I ended up coaching with him, they won 24 games. So looking back, I can say I was a part of something that was the beginning of what I think in a few years is going to be a really well-respected and really well-known program. So
absolutely,
we had some struggles in the beginning. We had a couple signature wins that were kind of like the glimmer of hope, and people saw the potential in Coach Bird, and people saw the potential in some of the players that we had. And then I think 2 seasons ago and then last season, people really took notice of how much things had turned around.
So once you finished up school, were you planning on sticking around the whole time? Was it always the plan, or did you have other ideas whenever you wrapped up school?
Man, that's a good question, because if you would have asked me on a Monday, I would have been fully 100% committed to sticking around. If you would have asked me on a Tuesday, I would have been trying to get as far away as possible. If you would have asked me on a Wednesday, who knows what I wanted to do. I went back and forth a million times a day. And I was just kind of, coaching was always something I wanted to do. And I figured, if nothing works out, if I don't get a GA position somewhere or some type of intern position, I can go back home and start coaching the high school. But fortunately, the Bill Ashby, the former athletic director here, and the President Short, they reached out and offered me the women's job, and it was an opportunity that I couldn't turn down. And so here I am, and I'm happy here. It's a place I'm comfortable at. It's a place where, it's becoming home for sure.
And also, I think part of the thing that comes along with being a employee in the athletic department at UMFK is you get a ton of other responsibilities. Like, what else are you doing on campus? I know they got you doing some other things besides just coaching basketball.
Yeah, I'm the sports information guy. So everything that goes on our athletics website and our athletics social media, I take care of that. I also have some duties in the student affairs office. I'm the residence life coordinator, so I kind of have partial responsibility of looking over the dorm. I try and help out Coach Bird with the men's basketball program as much as I can as his assistant. So they're keeping me busy over here without a doubt, man. Every day is always something.
Let's get into.
I can't complain.
Yeah, I know that's if they're keeping you busy, it's a good thing. That means you're doing something right, and they trust you to do more. So it's when they start taking things away. That's when you should be worried, I guess. But
yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, let's get into what we're here for, man. So head coach of the women's team, year 2, you said.
Yeah.
Quick recap. How'd you guys finish last year?
Last season we went 500. We ended up making it to the national tournament, the USCA national tournament. We were the 7th seed out of 8 teams to make it. And for those of you who don't know, the USCA is a small college affiliation. It's separate from NCAA, separate from NAIA. It's kind of for all of us small schools on the East Coast. So we made that. We lost in the first round to a team from Florida, but it was encouraging. You know, it was an incredible learning experience. Having only one season as an assistant, then just being thrown in being the head honcho with no assistants. It was a ton of fun. I learned a lot. I had a really good group of young ladies. They didn't cause too much trouble. Everybody went to class. Everybody took care of their business. So it was a good start, and now we're looking to kind of build off of that.
So going into year 2, so the first year you kind of just inherit whoever's there. Year
Exactly.
2, you get to add your first recruits and stuff like that. So what's this year looking like? What are your predictions for this season here? What are we looking at?
Well, I don't want to make too many bold predictions. You know, it's still somewhat a lot is up in the air, but I have a good group of. I feel I got a really good class coming in. I don't want to sound like that guy, but I did go out to California. I went almost exclusively to junior colleges, and I got a bunch of new players. I got 2 young ladies from Merced College, Trinity Washington, and Tajare McMahon. They went to Merced Community College. They took their team to the state championship of the junior college, California junior college system. I got Tamara Lee. She went to Laney College in Oakland. She's going to be a strong wing player for us. Lauren Lacey from Cabrillo College. She was in the top 3 in assists in the state. I got Yvette Trujillo from Rio Hondo College via El Paso, Texas. She's kind of a stretch for us. She's going to be big for us. And then I got a solid group of players coming back. So we're looking to just take the next step, increase the win total by, at least twice as much. That's the plan, but we'll see how it goes.
What's the schedule looking like?
It's beefed up from last year. We're doing a ton of traveling. We kind of have we don't have an easy schedule by any means. We start off with a tournament in Buffalo, New York at Villa Maria College. Right off the bat, we're playing some really tough teams. We're playing against Fisher College, who UMFK competes against them in all of our sports. We're playing Villa Maria College, who went to the national tournament for the USCA in Division II. Our home opener is on November 17th against Central Maine. Central Maine Community College, they only lost like 1 or 2 games last season. They're always tough. I got Maine Maritime. I'm playing Huston midseason. Of course, we got the 2 big games against Presque Isle, and then towards the end of the season, I'm playing against St. Joseph's College of Maine. So that's going to be a really, really big test for us.
Well, that'll be a real good game for you guys. That's a big game to get on the schedule.
Yeah, I was really happy that they agreed. It's our second to last game of the season, so I'm hoping by that time we'll be gearing up for the national tournament, and I think that'll kind of be a great barometer for us going into the postseason to see where we're at.
What's the bigger challenge, recruiting or scheduling home games? What's giving you more trouble?
Yeah, I feel like I can talk a cat off a fish wagon when it comes to convincing somebody to come and play here, but convincing somebody to come up here and play us is a totally different ball game.
Right.
We only got 5 home games this season. I know my athletic director and the school administration, they cringe every time they hear that because they want more home games. I like home games. I'm not against having them, but it's just tough to schedule them. We'll get the same teams that come up and play us: Umpy, Machias, Augusta. I do have Central Maine coming up here for a home game, like I said, our home opener. But other than that, it's tough. We're a long way up. I don't blame a team for not wanting to come up here, but I'm willing to go anywhere to play. So if you guys want to return the favor, we can make it happen.
Absolutely. What's the plan here? Are you is Fort Kent just the first stop in the long line of a long coaching career? Or are you gonna just ride it out, see what happens?
Oh man, put me on the spot. Like I said, Fort Kent's becoming home. it's been a while since I've lived full time back in San Francisco. San Francisco is changing a lot from the city that I grew up in as a kid. So, I love what I do. I love where I'm at. I don't see any reason to leave right now. So I just got to do the best job that I can with where I'm at. And after that, the rest is out of my control. So I got to control what I can control and just we'll take it from there.
So I read an article in the paper a couple days ago about the men's program and how they're getting these guarantee games from some of these D1 schools.
Yeah. Is
that going to be the approach here for the women's team? You guys going to try to start getting on some D1 schedules as well, or?
I'm working on it. I send about 10 or 15 emails every day to Division 1s, Division 2s, Division 3s, NAIA schools. As far, as the eye can see, as far south as Virginia and Washington, D.C., as far west as Kentucky, Ohio, Illinois. I don't want to jinx anything, but it looks like we might be taking a trip out to the West Coast next year. There's a couple big schools in Washington and Oregon that have agreed to give us some guarantees, so we might fly out there and put ourselves up against some of the better NAIA and potentially Division I teams on the West Coast and see how we fare with that. But I'm definitely taking after Coach Bird's model and the guarantee thing. It's a really big recruiting tool for us. It's an incredible experience for the players, for myself. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, real quickly, just get into the whole scheduling thing. So just explain to our listeners here how do you guys go about building up your schedule? It's a little bit different in college versus like high school, where you have all these teams around. You pretty much play the same schedule every year. What's it like trying to build up the college basketball schedule at the University of Maine at Fort Kent?
It's consuming. We're actually in a little bit of an even more unique position because we're an independent, so we're not in a conference. For example, Duke, they're in the ACC, so their conference schedule is going to be pretty much the same every single year. They're going to play North Carolina twice. They're going to play, Virginia Tech twice. They're going to play who else is in the ACC now? That's changed so much. Anyway, they've got their conference schedule set every year, so they only have to fill out their non-conference schedule of maybe another 8 to 10 games. For us, since we're not in the schedule, we have to create an entire 25 to 30 game slate of games. So I reach out to everybody. Like I said, I send out 10 or 15 emails every day to teams. Now, we do have the teams that we're going to play consistently. We'll play Machias twice every year, Umpy twice every year, Augusta twice every year, Unity twice every year. But other than that, it's just about making a connection and trying to trade a home this season for a home next season. And since we're so far away, I gotta plan the logistics of, okay, I can play this team in Pennsylvania. Can I play a team in Boston on the way down? Can I play a team in Connecticut on the way back up? Can I play in Portland on the first day of the trip, the last day of the trip? So it's just about planning things way, way in advance, sending out those emails, doing it early, doing it every day, staying on top of it. And also trying to put yourself against the best competition. I wouldn't be doing my team any justice. I wouldn't be doing our program any justice if I scheduled 30 games that I think we could win by 30 points every game.
Right.
That wouldn't be fun. That wouldn't be fair. So reaching out to some of the best teams around. Like I said, I'll play anybody. That's kind of our mantra here at the UMFK basketball office. So it's consuming, but it's kind of fun. I get to kind of craft where I want to go and who I want to play and what I want to see, what we want to do. So it's tiring, but it's fun at the same time.
And it's like you said, it also plays into your recruiting pitch too. Like whenever you can
definitely
sell the recruit on who you're going to be playing and traveling to and stuff like that. So it all comes together. It all plays one big part in the whole game here.
Yeah, a whole bunch of little pieces end up adding up into something a lot bigger eventually. I hadn't done much traveling on the East Coast before I moved out here, and to play and to eventually coach. But since I've moved out here, I've been to Niagara Falls, Times Square, Boston, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C. And I tell my recruits the same thing. You're going to get the opportunity on a day off to, see the World Trade Center or see Niagara Falls or maybe go to a pro sporting event if we have the time and the money. So it's a really incredible experience.
You guys are lucky. Back in my day, our trips were like to Paul Smith. that was what we saw in New York.
Yeah, now don't get me wrong, man. I sell the recruits on Niagara Falls and Times Square, but there's a lot of SUNY Delhi trips,
Yeah.
New Hampshire Institute of Technology trips, Alfred State, New York, middle of nowhere. So there's the glorious ones, and then there's definitely a lot of not so glorious ones. So I feel your pain on that one.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is going to do it for this week's episode. So thank you to Coach Fletch for coming through. We wish nothing but the best to the UMFK women's program this year, as always. Thank you to Coach Tom Bird for coming through in the first half. Best of luck to the men's program as well. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Big Time, the podcast. Make sure to go back and check out all of our previous episodes with all of our fantastic guests out there on iTunes and YouTube. That's going to be it. We'll see you next time on